Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a really exclusive, premium look into the cognitive architecture of the ultra-wealthy. We're decoding the psychology of wealth, specifically breaking down the 7 secret habits of millionaires. And look, this isn't about some fleeting get-rich-quick scheme, okay? It's about fundamentally rewiring how you view capital, risk, and value. We're going to explore exactly how the world's most successful individuals architect their minds to build, sustain, and literally multiply empires. Imagine for a second waking up tomorrow morning with a cool $1 million sitting right there in your bank account. Pretty great, right? Well, most people think that sudden windfall would just instantly solve every single one of their problems. The debts vanish, the stress totally evaporates, and life just becomes this perpetual vacation. But is it really that simple? Let's actually look at the incredibly strange, well-documented paradox of overnight fortunes. Because here's the really uncomfortable truth about wealth. Thousands of people have won the lottery, received massive inheritances, or just stumbled into vast fortunes literally overnight, and a shocking number of them ended up completely broke again just a few years later. Why does that happen? Well, it's because a massive influx of cash without a massive upgrade in financial literacy is just a complete recipe for disaster. They completely lacked the psychological foundation and the strict behavioral infrastructure required to actually handle and grow it. And this brilliantly illustrates the core thesis we're tackling today. Money doesn't create a millionaire mindset. A millionaire mindset creates money. You see, the biggest difference between the truly wealthy and everyone else isn't their natural IQ or blind luck or even how many grueling hours a week they clock in at an office. It's purely how they think. Wealth is, essentially, an external manifestation of an internal operating system. So throughout this explainer, we're going to break down the 7 secret thinking habits of millionaires. These are the powerful mental frameworks that quietly shape every single decision they make, from how they allocate their mornings to how they deploy their capital. And make sure you stick with me through all of these, because the final, 7th habit, it's the absolute catalyst. It's the definitive line in the sand that separates those who actually build wealth from those who only dream about it. Okay, let's dive right into this with habit number 1. They think long-term. You see, there's a fundamental divide in how we view time. Most people operate on a survival baseline, constantly asking themselves, how can I make money this month? It's a reactionary, short-term mentality focused strictly on the immediate future. But millionaires, they ask, how can I build an ecosystem that still pays me 10 years from now? They aren't chasing quick, fleeting wins or a temporary spike in dopamine. They're architecting lasting systems. They operate on a strict 10-year horizon. They focus entirely on creating value that compounds, whether that's building a highly resilient business, aggressively funding a broad index portfolio that captures the growth of the entire economy, or mastering elite skills that just become rarer and more valuable every single year. The richest people completely understand that patience isn't just sitting around passively waiting. It's actively trading today's sweat and capital for tomorrow's ultimate leverage. Which brings us perfectly to habit number 2. They buy assets, not just things. Now, when the average person gets a sudden bonus or a bump in pay, they immediately think about a lifestyle upgrade, right? A brand new phone, a massive television, designer clothes. But wealthy people completely redefine capital allocation. Before buying, they pause and ask, will this make me money or cost me money? An asset is simply an investment, a productive business, or an opportunity mathematically designed to grow in value or produce future cash flow. Cash flowing real estate, equity in a profitable company, scalable digital products, these are the real vehicles of wealth. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how every single time capital enters your life, a strict binary choice is made. You're basically standing at a crossroads. Are you funding income-generating assets that will quietly build your wealth and multiply your net worth while you sleep? Or are you sinking it into cost-generating upgrades, like that brand new luxury car, that immediately start bleeding value and depreciating the second you swipe your card or drive off the lot? It's literally a choice between future freedom and immediate gratification. The ultra-wealthy understand one incredibly simple, yet really heavy idea. Every dollar spent is a decision about your future. Let that sink in for a second. Your daily financial choices are literally casting votes on the exact lifestyle you'll be forced to live a decade from now. When you spend $1 on a liability, you're essentially assigning your future self a bill. But when you invest $1 in an asset, you're buying your future self a piece of freedom. Moving on to habit number 3, seeing problems as opportunities. Look, most people run in the exact opposite direction of difficult problems. They encounter a massive hurdle, throw their hands up, and just say, this is impossible. But millionaires, they sprint toward the fire.
They shift their mindset and simply ask, how can I solve this? Because they recognize that within the most complex, frustrating friction points of society lies the absolute greatest potential for immense profit. Why do they run toward complex problems? Because literally every massive empire in the world exists solely because it solved a major friction point for someone else. Think about it for a second. Global transportation, seamless communication, one-click shopping, instant entertainment. When someone figured out how to remove the friction from hailing a cab, they didn't just build an app, they built a multi-billion-dollar transportation empire. When someone solved the logistical nightmare of buying goods and having them arrive the very next day, they totally redefined global commerce. The bigger the headache you solve, the larger your paycheck. That single shift in questioning, how can I solve this? It changes absolutely everything.
Habit number 4 is that they never stop learning. There is this pervasive, highly dangerous myth out there that successful people already know everything, that they reach the summit of their industry and now they just sort of coast on autopilot. But the reality is the exact opposite. The ultra-wealthy aggressively upgrade their minds throughout their entire lives. They obsessively read. They listen. They swallow their pride to ask questions of people who are miles ahead of them. They treat their own intellect as the ultimate asset that requires constant maintenance and expansion. So the crucial point is this. Knowledge compounds just like money. Your income generally grows right alongside your ability to create value. And continuous, aggressive learning is absolutely the best way to increase that ability. Just one single profound idea learned today from a book or a mentor can drastically influence your critical decisions, steer you away from catastrophic risks, and exponentially increase your value creation for decades to come. Now, habit number 5 is where a significant portion of people really stumble. They control their emotions. Look, markets are gonna rise and fall. Businesses will inevitably face terrible, unforeseen setbacks. And average people, they make their financial decisions based on sheer panic when the market drops, or blind fear of missing out when a trendy new asset hypes up. But millionaires base their decisions on cold, calculated logic. They aren't robots devoid of feeling. They just absolutely refuse to let a temporary emotional spike drive a permanent financial decision.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds, considering the reality of a standard economic cycle. In year 1, the market rises rapidly and everyone feels like an absolute genius. Then year 2 brings a sudden, painful business setback. By year 3, the market plummets, headlines are screaming about a recession, and total panic sets in. But by year 4, the overall long-term trend reveals continuous, steady growth. If you panic and liquidate everything in year 2 or 3 because of fear, you permanently lock in your losses. Staying calm during inevitable volatility isn't just about finding inner peace, It's the ultimate strategic move to protect your capital. Wealth is routinely transferred from the impatient to the patient, which flows perfectly into habit number 6. They surround themselves with growth. Your ultimate success isn't just about what you know inside your own head. Your environment, massively and often subconsciously, dictates your standard of normal. If you exist in a stagnant environment where everyone complains, makes excuses, and just waits for things to happen, well, you're going to naturally start complaining and waiting too. But in a growth environment where everyone is aggressively learning, building, and creating, you will naturally adapt, absorb their intensity, and elevate your own game just to keep up. Millionaires intentionally and ruthlessly engineer a high-performance ecosystem around themselves. They heavily audit their growth inputs, actively seeking out top-tier mentors, digesting challenging books, and fighting to gain access to highly driven communities. And the wealth outputs from this environment are just undeniable. They generate brilliant new ideas, engage in deep, thought-provoking discourse, and exist in a psychological space where massive success is celebrated as the standard expectation rather than criticized out of petty envy. All right, we've finally arrived. Habit number 7, the ultimate wealth catalyst. This is the one I promised you at the very beginning. You can have all the long-term vision, the compounding assets, the cold logic, and the brilliant mentors in the world. But without this final habit, you remain nothing more than an educated dreamer. This habit is the engine of execution. It is what actually builds empires. Habit 7 is that they take action before they feel ready. Most people suffer from severe analysis paralysis. They're sitting around waiting for the stars to align, the perfect time in the economy, the absolute flawless million-dollar idea, a risk-free, meticulously mapped-out plan, or just the perfect level of internal, unshakable confidence. But millionaires know a powerful secret. Perfection is an illusion. It rarely, if ever, arrives, so they absolutely refuse to wait for it. Conventional wisdom has the formula completely upside down. Step 1 is not get confident. Step 1 is to take imperfect, messy action.
You just launch the project. You just make the investment. You just start. That raw, imperfect start drives step 2, gaining brutal, real-world experience. You learn what actually works, you fail, you pivot, and you adapt in real time. And it's that gritty, hard-earned experience that ultimately forces step 3, unbreakable confidence. Confidence doesn't come first. It grows because of action. Every single successful business, every massive investment portfolio, every stellar career began with someone taking an imperfect first step into the unknown. Action breeds clarity. The people who move forward despite the crushing weight of uncertainty, despite not having all the answers, are the ones who gather the most valuable lessons of all and capture the absolute highest returns. So, as we bring this all together, let's do a rapid recap of the elite psychology we've covered in this explainer. Think long-term. Buy compounding assets, not depreciating liabilities. Solve massive problems. Keep learning obsessively. Control your emotions with pure logic. Build a high-growth environment. And above all else, take imperfect action. You don't need millions in the bank today to start thinking like an empire builder. Becoming wealthy isn't about pretending to be rich, it's about learning to think differently. Success doesn't begin with money. It begins entirely with mindset. If you enjoyed this premium look into the psychology of wealth, make sure to subscribe to Rich Origins. We're incredibly dedicated to bringing you more high-quality insights into business, success, and the elite cognitive architecture behind how the world's most successful people actually operate. Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought to close out our explainer. You now have the blueprint. You know the 7 secret habits of millionaires. You completely understand the internal operating system of the wealthy. The only thing left is execution. So, what is your very next decision?